Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome back after the brief break to Finance and Corporate Services Committee. There are 3 items on the agenda, no consent items, so we will get right into it. The first item is the amendment to the liquor license condition. There are no staff presentations in any of these items, so if you have any questions, please queue in. Councillor Marsh.
I have no questions, but I'm prepared to move at the appropriate time.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
My only question is why are we in this business now? Because things have changed considerably. Why do we even go through this process?
Who would like to speak to that? Ms. Scheer.
I'm able to. We no longer do this process for liquor license applicants in the downtown. So these are really remnant agreements from when we did do the process.
And that seems appropriate the way things are going. So why do we even make these people have to change it? Why don't the agreements we have really die?
Council could direct for that to happen. Right now, we feel there is still some value in the agreements that remain. Additionally, many of our agreements flowed through to the AGCO, who used to put the conditions of our agreement onto the liquor license. So it would be a sort of 2-step process. Even if we were willing to terminate all of our agreements, the AGCO would have to consider whether they wish to remove conditions that have followed.
So you're telling me that they also have a lot of conditions that are there, but they're out of the business too, and they're remaining there.
Yeah. No, the AGCO is still very much in the business, but they have conditions that they have put on solely at our request.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, there are no further questions. It's been moved by Councillor Marsh. Those in favour? And that carries unanimously. On to item number 2. The Humane Society item. Any questions of staff on this item? Councillor Gazzola.
I was wondering what happened in 2015, that the reason we're doing this, we've had a really somewhat of an accounting change, and that we transferred 137,000 that came in 2015 that's really applicable to 2016. I'm just wondering what happened. Was 2015, did people decide just not to pay, or did they all come in late? Or I wonder if you just give me a little background on that.
I can answer that. We used to have a license that was only good until the end of December, no matter what time you bought it. And although people were supposed to buy them at the beginning of the year, that didn't always happen. So a good portion of that business would come in January, but there would be stragglers that had to be found or through enforcement had to be followed up with to buy their licenses later in the year. So when we changed to a 12-month license, all of a sudden, if you bought a license later than January, part of the revenue for that license would be attributed to another year. So if I bought a license halfway through the year, because it's good halfway into 2016, half of the cost of that license would be applied to the 2016 calendar year.
Okay. So, can you tell me how many dogs are, any idea of how many dogs there are in the city of Kitchener?
Nobody knows. I've just spoken to our colleagues at the Humane Society, and they said perhaps 45 to 50,000. It could be higher, could be lower. Until we find them all, we can't be sure.
So, and what's a rough average fee for a dog?
The license fees vary depending on different circumstances, but $30 would be a typical sort of license fee.
So let's just assume there are 50,000 dogs at $30 a year, if my math is correct, that comes out to $1.5 million a year. How much are we collecting in fees in a year?
These figures aren't exact because I believe some licenses had refunds depending on different circumstances, but in 2014, I have approximately $594,000, and in 2015, approximately $575,000. So you're correct. If we were able to license all of the dogs in the city, we wouldn't be here today. There would be no problem. There would be plenty of revenue coming in.
So my next question is, where are we going wrong? How are we missing all of these other dogs?
That's the golden question. If anyone can answer it, we would love to hear that answer. I know the Humane Society has tried many different things to find those dogs. The city's done some initiatives, some campaign to try and get dogs licensed. We've tried to educate the public. I know the Humane Society sent out students going around to houses trying to find these dogs. So we're doing all the things that are cost effective that we can think of. However, when they put all the resources into doing all of these things, they didn't get enough back in licensing to make it worthwhile for them to continue, is what we've heard from them.
Okay, I just want to quickly review our contract, and apparently it's remained the same since 2013, is that we pay $505,000, but we get back $209,000 by way of dog licenses.
That's correct.
So that leaves us with a city cost of $295,000. Is that right?
No, we pay the $505,000, so that's a cost to the city.
Yes. Yeah.
You're right, we get the $209,000, but we also give over the rest of the licensing revenue each year.
No, but we do get back $209,000.
We get back $209,000, yes.
Yeah. So the cost to the city is about $300,000 a year.
And what we pay out of pocket, I was thinking also we're essentially paying over the rest of our licensing revenue, so that is a cost in a way, but you're right, out of pocket.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. My time is run.
Councillor Fernandez?
So on the same vein that Councillor Gazzola is going, and Councillor Schneider and I, and previously Councillor Davey, we sat on the Dog Appeal Committee, and I'm pleasantly surprised that most of the dogs that are coming through have been licensed. And I see Mr. Kinch, right? Is that correct? Is sitting in the audience. Is there, besides going door to door, and I heard from a number of residents when that happened, they felt like, they were being trapped into finding out that they had a dog. But certainly when I went door to door, I would say I think I would be amiss in saying at least every other house had a dog. Is there some way we can work through the veterinarian services, through the Pet Smarts and the different dog store or pet stores that are selling? Is there something that some kind of incentive? I know that you've already used an incentive in terms of making it easy. It's online. It's quick. What I heard on the radio last week was somebody saying, "Well, buying a dog license has absolutely no value to me." Maybe we need to engage in some kind of a campaign to show the public how important it is that if you have your dog license, it returns that dog to your residence in a much quicker manner. And is there some way we can partner with some agency to do that? Has it been investigated?
I know a lot of the marketing and education that has been done does center on that theme that your license is your dog's ticket home. I've seen posters in previous years. Mm-hmm. I know the city did some campaigning last year, I believe, some marketing trying to get people to come in and get their license. I know the Humane Society tries to educate with that message. Certainly, if we were to print off flyers or pamphlets or something like that, we could ask if vets or pet stores would be willing to distribute them, but they are their own business, and it would only be if they were willing to do that for us.
Okay. So really the crux of it is that we've got this many dogs out in the community. People are not licensing them, therefore the Humane Society is working at a constant deficit, is really the biggest issue here. Okay, all right, thanks.
Councillor Schneider?
Thank you, Chair Davey. I'm wondering if there's a possibility of collecting the license fee at the point of sale of a dog from a breeder or be it a retail store. You know, when you purchase a house, you already have to pay your land transfer tax at the same time. Could that be possibly looked into? And as Councillor Fernandez said, possibly when you take your pet to a veterinary service or for anything like that, that they could check to see if you have a license and get the license at that point?
It's something we've talked about. In Kitchener, I don't know that there's any pet stores that sell dogs. Most dogs nowadays are bought off of Kijiji or Craigslist or things like that, where we don't have a license for the person selling the dogs. So we have no really good way of controlling the supply of dogs, if you'd say, and making people license when they buy a dog. As for vets and stuff like that, I mean, they're in a private business and they want a good relationship with their customers, and they may be willing to provide some education. I don't think they're going to want to turn over information for enforcement.
Yeah, but I think it may be wise to explore some of these. You know, in order to purchase dog food, show your dog license. You know, so we're missing out on a lot of money here, and I think the inconvenience of maybe having to ask a pet owner that, I think is well worth it. So,
It'd be great if they were willing.
Yeah. But I think we should look into some of these possibilities, because we're just going to keep coming back here all the time saying, well, there's no real way of doing it. Well, there could be some options, and I think they should be explored.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola?
I just have a final question. The dog light, this is really a user fee, and it bothers me that the taxpayers are left with about $250,000 a year on a user fee. Most of our other user fees pay for themselves, and there's really no cost to the taxpayer. Why can't we simply go, as we do when we're campaigning every 4 years, and knock on doors, and every place has a dog comes running? Why can we not just go and knock on a block of doors and find out if the people have their license? And if not, give them a chance to purchase one or give them a ticket. Because they are costing the rest of the taxpayers substantial funds, the same as, like I say, in all our other user fees, they pay for themselves.
Ms. Shear?
It's a tough question.
I understand that we have tried door-to-door campaigning, and that the Humane Society may be able to speak more to that if you're interested, but with limited success.
Well, I would like to hear, like as I say, it's a user charge that's being put on the burden of all the taxpayers. And I tried to, as I went through this yesterday, I know that it's animal control, so it covers other than just dogs, but what should be the price to the taxpayers for animal control? And I think it's getting beyond that.
And you want to hear from Mr. Kinch?
I would, yes. Well,
so I will allow it, because I think there's been I think it's fair for Mr. Kinch to respond. But I just want to be careful too. We're not going to solve the problem today. The point of the issue we're dealing with today is catching them up in their payments, and solving the problem is something we're going to have to look at over the next couple of years. But Mr. Kinch, thank you.
That's fine. Are we looking at solving the problem? I guess that's all we were asking.
Mr. Kinch, just respond.
Good morning. There's really two elements to it. There's animal control, which includes operation of the shelter and the pound and enforcing the bylaws, and then there's licensing. There's a component for paying for animal control, that is the fee that you referred to, the 500 and some odd thousand, and then the balance is to be made up of licensed sales. When you're dealing with potentially, and I think in the last couple of years we've sold between 14 1,000 and 15,000 licenses, if they're only at $25 and $30 a piece, the cost in securing those that ignore the renewals notices or choose not to purchase is significant for a $25 return. The other issue is when you get into pursuing these to the point of charging individuals, the revenue generated by a successful charge goes to the city, not the Humane Society. So there's a limitation on the expenses where it does no longer make a business argument for the Humane Society to pursue those that do not purchase licenses. The actual cost of animal control for the city of Kitchener is in the $900,000 to $1 million a year.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Just as a comment, I really believe this is a City of Kitchener problem and not a Humane Society problem. So it's something that we have to deal with.
There are no further questions, Mr. Kinch. Thank you for speaking.
Thank you.
Just quick question myself, Ms. Scheer. There are so many people that are not paying. What happens if we're aware of a dog and they still refuse to pay? Can you walk me through that process?
Well, our enforcement officers have recently stepped up enforcement to try and assist with this issue. So if they're out and about and see a dog that's not wearing its licensing tag as it's required to under the bylaw, they will stop and question that person. And if there is no dog license, a ticket will be issued. I believe the total charge for a ticket is $200 now. So it should be a significant deterrent to choosing not to buy a $30 license.
Okay, and again, just to be clear then, as Mr. Kinch said, none of that ticketing or further revenue goes back to the Humane Society, that stays with the City of Kitchener to cover the cost of the enforcement itself.
No, if a ticket is laid, the city does do the prosecution, and any revenue from the charge would come back to the city.
Okay, very good. I do not see any further questions in the queue. Could I get a mover for this? Moved by Councillor Fernandez. Comments? Not seeing any, I will, okay. Mayor Rabinovich?
Well, yeah, just very quickly. I think, looking at this issue from a one-time perspective in terms of the particular agreement that was put in place, the change in the collection processes and so on, certainly makes a lot of sense. I think we are going to, in the context of the next contract, have a fuller discussion, and obviously our staff and Humane Society staff are going to have that dialogue as we negotiate the contracts in the future and look at what is both the appropriate fee structure that should be in place, as well as how do we try to arrive at an environment that sees more dogs getting licensed, both for the sake of the animal and its owners, but also for the overall budget associated with this work. I think we have a long history with the KW and North Waterloo Humane Society and a great relationship between us and them, and I'm confident that we're going to be able to find a mechanism to see that continue going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I hope this is a one-time thing and not something that we're going to have to look at every year for the next 2 or 3 years. I don't find any fault with the Humane Society. They've provided us excellent service over the years, and I've been around here long enough to know that it's almost impossible to find anybody else to even consider doing the job. So we're fortunate to have them, but I think it's an area that we need to look at because it's costing all the taxpayers. I think it's getting to be substantial dollars for something that should clearly be paid for by the users, and we need to look at different ways of collecting. I mean, if we with 50,000 dogs, if we collected from half of them, there's still another 10,000 dogs that we could be collecting from. So I know staff are busy with a lot of areas, but this is an area that I hope in next year's business plans we take a look at reviewing.
Councillor Inez?
Thank you, Chair Davey. I think this will be a challenging process in the upcoming years for us to deal with. I personally don't see this as a user fee. And I don't think you could argue that with a dog owner that would think this is a user fee. It's just like anything else. If older adults say, I don't go to school, so why am I paying school taxes? So I think this is a quality life issue that we need to iron out.
I'll be supporting the motion. I think it's careful to remember that the Humane Society isn't like a contractor. They're a partner of ours we've worked with for 90 years, and we by no means need to cough up this extra $127,000. $137,000. We're in a contract, and we're doing it precisely because they are our partners, and precisely because nobody wants to see the welfare and the animals in the city Kitchener be underfunded. So we absolutely have challenges going forward in terms of dog licensing. And if there's one message I'd want to communicate, it's that there's a sentiment out there that when someone pays for their dog license, that the money is somehow absorbed by a bureaucracy or it's a tax grab, etc. And when the reality is every dollar that goes towards these dog licenses goes back to the care and welfare of animals. So I think that's the important point to take away. So, as moved by Councillor Fernandez, those in favour? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. On to the final item, the Comprehensive Business Licensing Review Update. Okay, any questions of staff on this item? Councillor Gazzola.
I'm just curious as to why, instead of stopping things now, why they're recommending that we don't add the normal increase in this area. A lot of work has been done. Surely we know in what direction we're going. I hate to see us put a freeze on fees 1 year and then have to play catch up next year. Can we not carry on in our normal fashion? And if there are some that we find at the end of the study that are totally out of whack, making adjustments for them, but otherwise carry on with business as usual and complete the study. We're not talking a lot of dollars, and I appreciate that, but it's just a principle that next year we have to catch up. They're going to say, well, our increase is such and such a percentage, and it really isn't.
Ms. Darling?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's certainly an option that Council can exercise. We were just suggesting that because we were unable to make the fee recommendations for 2017, that holding them at the 2016 fees would be fair in light of the fact that we were not able to make those recommendations. But certainly if Council would prefer for us to invoke the 2%, we can certainly do that.
Okay, Councillor Fernandez, questions?
Yeah, I wanted to, under the work completed to date, I see that we have done some stakeholder engagement. What kind of comment, can you share with us some of the comments that you may have already heard from the stakeholders, where we're going in the direction? Have we given them a sense of where we're going with our licensing, or are we just really just getting feedback from them right now?
So we're pretty much in the collection phase. Well, we've collected, and Tanya Danios was able to do a little bit of reconciliation of those comments, which I have there, and given you some very preliminary responses. So some of the common themes that we saw, which pretty much aligned with what staff pretty much already knew, and some things that you, Council, have heard from stakeholders. So I've included those as part of what we've seen so far. We've not been able at this point with the loss of the manager to be able to translate those yet into any type of recommendation or any kind of work plan for implementation that would be reasonable.
If we were to go ahead with a 2% inflationary increase, we found that, that we were actually penalizing some licenses, or we were charging them too much once we realign everything. Would we be able to do sort of not a refund maybe, but just a general next year drop-down fee, or would that be too complicated?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have not in the past done any type of refund for anyone. It would be rather difficult to do that. The fee is being charged with respect to whatever the services is for that particular year, which is why at this point we're recommending we hold flat, seeing as how we don't know at this point where we're going to wind up for, after the comprehensive review is concluded and we actually have reconciled the fees with respect to administrative costs, etc.
Because it says that if we were to increase, it would be 7,500 would be what we'd be taking in.
Approximately, yes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'd like to move this item, but I would like us to consider the inflationary increase.
Sorry, before you click out, to be clear then, so you're moving the item, but you want to include in the motion the 2%
Yes.
increase. Okay. Councillor Marsh.
I was actually going to ask if we have any indication that certain fees are in line with similar services in other municipalities, and if we would want to just add the increase for some of them. But then clearly through your stakeholder engagement so far, we know that some of the fees are seen by customers as being too high, and so I wondered if it would be simple to do a blended approach where the fees that we know are in line and should just be increased with the rate of inflation can be done so, but in the ones that are questionable, hold steady. Would that be too tricky, or would that be a fairly straightforward process?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would say that we did not hear overwhelmingly that fees were too high, but to be fair, we did not hear from all of the sectors either. So at this point, if we were to only address those fees that had been spoken to by those who had responded, if I may be so bold to suggest, it would be the squeaky wheel getting the oil. Mm-hmm. So we are looking at it from a more fair perspective, that we wouldn't do anything, we would hold all the fees flat, which would be fair to all the sectors, or if council so chose, to increase the fees, and then everyone would be treated consistently and fairly.
So if we increase the fees by the rate of inflation for 2017, and then within the year of 2017 found that certain fees are too high, what would be the method of addressing that rate that's too high? Would it be waiting until 2018 then to decrease the fee, or would we mid-year consider reducing the fee? What would be your recommendation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my recommendation would be to reconcile it for the 2018 user fees. It would be very difficult for us to refund, considering that that's a budget line within the legislated services operating budget.
That's fine. It sounds like we're being caught here in a year. It's going to be a year and a half after receiving feedback that certain fees are too high, that we would then address that. It sounds like it's too slow in my view. So I'm not prepared to support the motion of increasing them across the board before we find out what is too high and what is not.
Okay, I don't have anyone else in the queue. And I guess from staff's perspective and experience, do you expect a reaction, or if we were to increase the 2%? And obviously we can't hold you to it because not everyone's been consulted, but with the information that you do have, do you expect some sort of blowback from if the fees were increased by this 2%?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not expecting a significant backlash with respect to an increase of the fees, with the exception maybe of a couple of the sectors that previously had been identified, most notably food trucks and the temporary secondhand retail market. But again, as I said before, staff is looking to have some kind of fair, consistent approach, whether that is an across-the-board increase or an across-the-board hold flat.
Okay. To be clear on the recommendation or the motion, Councillor Fernandez, it's a little bit contrary. So I think what you're really just implying is the 2% increase, because the recommendation gets confusing if you include the both, which is fine. I just want to be clear on that. Sorry, Councillor Gazzola? Right, it's a new motion, exactly. And a recorded vote as well. And okay, and I'll just comment briefly. I'm going to support the 2% increase. This is one of those times when I'm glad that we have some time in between this and ratification at council to consider some of the implications. But I reserve the right to change that at that time. But at this point, I intend to support the increase pending any new information. Okay, no other comments I see. So those in favor? Oh, recorded vote. Sorry, recorded vote has been called. Those in favor? And opposed? Okay. And the motion carries, and that concludes Finance and Corporate Services. Can we get into Special Counsel after the switchover? About 2 minutes? Okay, very good. Councillor Gazzola, question?
No, I have a question on the item that's there for information.
Certainly, that does require a vote from council. So you're making that motion?
Yes.
Okay. Those in favor of questions on the group benefits? That carries. Councillor Gazzola, your question.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'd like a little more information as to why we're not going out for bids. What I would like to know is, what is the total dollar that we spend annually for this service? And what I'm asking is, what does it really cost the municipality, not just to what we would pay to Sun Life, but what is the total bill?
Mr. Chapman.
Through the chair, I'll respond to the first question first. It's unusual that an organization would switch benefit carriers or even tender too frequently. It's typical that they would be with a carrier for a long period of time. That said, we thought it was important 5 years in to review the cost effectiveness of the program, and that's why the report is here. As noted in the report, there are two issues. One is it does cost money to retain a benefits consultant to help prepare the bid documents. We estimate that cost to be about $75,000. And it's a very time-consuming undertaking, even to go through the RFP evaluation process, notwithstanding how complicated it would be to make the change. What we've noted here is that we do not actually pay Sun Life for health and dental claims costs. We only pay them to administer the program on our behalf, so the cost is quite low. I'll have to report back to council, though, on what the cost is for those services, and if I understand correctly, you're also asking for the costs of the health and dental claims themselves.
Yes, I realize we don't pay their fee is based on what we pay, so on our total cost. So I would like to know what that total cost is.
Right, and so I can email that information to council.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gazzola, those are your questions?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, and there are no further questions. Again, Finance and Corporate Services Committee is recessed.